I've joked before, I've been asked what it's like to work with him, and I always say it's like falling off a horse. You have to go, you have to go limp because if you brace for impact, you're going to break something. And when I say that, I mean like I do mean it as a compliment to him because like things change so rapidly, plans change, ideas change, things, evolve at a rapid pace. And so you need to show up every day ready to pivot, ready to work with what's been thrown at you. And the falling off the horse analogy, that going, bracing for impact, if you enter a day feeling precious about a sound design that you love, or, overly attached to a schedule or a plan, you're going to break something. That's going to be the point of failure. It's just going to be a bad day. So it's always better to kind of come in loose and just sort of ready to roll out of it, get back up, dust yourself off, back on the horse and hit the trail. You know what I mean?
Hi everyone, welcome to the latest episode of Zebra Spotlight. I'm absolutely thrilled to be speaking with Nathan Robitaille, who's the sound supervisor for the hit film Frankenstein, Guillermo del Toro's latest masterpiece. The sound design for this film, I was particularly excited to discuss. It's been a long time, so I'm so glad I've got a hold of you. Nathan, please introduce yourself to the audience. Let us know what you've done before, and then we'll go straight in.
Yeah, so you kind of hit most of the key points there. I'm a sound designer. I work a lot with Guillermo del Toro. I've been working with him for about 10 years, and so the soundscape that you refer to in Frankenstein is kind of the result of a more than a decade long shorthand that I, as well as my partner Nelson, have developed with Guillermo just from working with him through the years, starting on he we did a TV show called The Strain for him. He was the producer of that show. That was our first exposure to him, and then on the heels of that, we were awarded the contract for Shape of Water, which we're all very proud. We got nominated for an Academy Award, and kind of started a relationship with him that hasn't ended. And we're thrilled about that because he's a delight to work with.
But we'll come on to what it's like working with him in due course. And you mentioned The Shape of Water, another superb film. Um, the How did you get into sound design in the first place? How did you get into the movie industry?
I fell backwards into it, and this is one. Of course, I don't know if he cringes when I tell this story or if he's proud, but Nelson, my partner on Frankenstein, actually hired me when I was 17 years old.
Wow.
I was
Okay.
interested in getting into music after a long high school phase of being interested in visual arts. I found a guitar and started playing in bands and things like that. Wanted to pursue a career in music and found myself in a high school program that had a co-op placement, and I needed to find some kind of work experience. And my father's accountant was the same accountant who was working with Nelson at the time, and said, "Well, I know a guy who works in movies. Maybe your kid would wanna check that out, you know." And so I showed up to this, co-op placement interview, and it was a much younger Nelson, much younger Nathan. This is 30 years ago. A lot of embarrassing stories could be told. But yeah, basically I started packing boxes and fetching coffee for people around Sound Dogs, and you know, I was just too stubborn to leave. I did go off to school. I learned to record music at Fanshawe College in London, Ontario, and ultimately kind of came home to this because it just sort of felt like a family. Sound Dogs
Mhm.
very much feels like a family. So it was a fun thing to come back to, and you know to a high school student who's interested in music, getting to sit behind people like Craig Hennigan, or work with Paula Fairfield, or Nelson Ferreira, Jill Purdy, all of these people in this company is it's pretty attractive. So it was pretty easy to come back.
That's a fantastic story. Again, I've heard so many stories from guys working in your industry with it's such just the randomness, and you just turn up on meet the right people at the right time, and the stars align. But that's a fabulous story, and I've got to send a big shout out to Nelson Ferreira, who couldn't join us today. He's busy working on a movie like all you guys are. But I'm sure we'll get him on at some point. So you mentioned being as part of a fantastic family at Sound Dogs. Tell us more about the production company. I believe you guys are based in Toronto.
We are, yeah. It's an interesting company. I wish Nelson could be here because he'd be able to give you the origin stories. He was one of the founders of Sound Dogs. He and another guy, Rob Noakes, who is a name a lot of people are familiar with, started the company. Rob went down to LA. I believe Greg King was part of that too. And they've got kind of the Sound Dogs LA, and Nelson always held on to the Sound Dogs here in Toronto. So Sound Dogs is split into a couple of entities. There is, of course, the sound library online that everybody knows about. That's Rob Noakes, and then here in Toronto, Nelson is the president and owner of the brand that is Sound Dogs. And it's kind of it's a bit of a ragtag crew, you know. It's a family. A lot of people like myself, we are all independent contractors. We don't work for Sound Dogs, but we you know try and pry us apart, right? It's a constant collaboration, and you develop these shorthands with people, and so we kind of see ourselves as almost more of a tribe, for a lack of a better word, like we are very much a team, and every now and then we'll someone else will kind of come in from outside of the Sound Dogs family, and sure enough, they wind up embraced. So it's a pretty cool way to work. It's pretty open, pretty fluid. Nothing about it is rigid. If you want to take time off, you just go and take time off, which is what I just came from. I've taken a couple of months off and I'm just starting to get back into work now.
Fantastic. And we mentioned you've been working with Guillermo del Toro for about 10 years. Um, Give us some insight. What's it like to work with him? And I know he's sometime in Canada, which is his new home. Sometime, most of the time in LA. I know he's got some affinity for Canada. I know he hates the highways just like I do. Tell us what it's like to be working with him on set, and particularly the focus on the sound design.
First of all, it's a privilege to work with him. He is fast, and we are expected to keep up. He is creatively very quick. It's funny, I've been asked, I've joked before, I've been asked what it's like to work with him, and I always say it's like falling off a horse. You have to go, you have to go limp because if you brace for impact, you're gonna break something. And when I say that, I mean like I do mean it as a compliment to him because like things change so rapidly, plans change, ideas change, things, evolve at a rapid pace. And so you need to show up every day ready to pivot, ready to work, with what's been thrown at you. And the falling off the horse analogy, that going, bracing for impact, if you enter a day feeling precious about a sound design that you love, or overly attached to a schedule or a plan, you're going to break something. That's going to be the point of failure. It's just going to be a bad day. So it's always better to kind of come in loose and just sort of ready to roll out of it, get back up, dust yourself off, back on the horse and hit the trail. You know what I mean? Um, he things change. Things change quickly when you're working with him. And if you kind of enter it with that mindset, it's the time of your life. Like it is the best experience just because, you know, he's very serious, he's very, passionate, but he's also really funny, you know. He's hard on everything. He's like very discriminating tastes, you know. And so, clearing that bar, you see the visuals. He feels the same way about the sound, and he gets really involved in the sound. Sound is, if I had a dime for every time I heard a particular client, like sound is really important to a particular client, I'd be a rich man. Um, if I had a dime for every time that was as true as it is with Guillermo, I wouldn't be able to pay the rent. You know what I mean? Like it wouldn't be a thing. He's a cut above for sure.
Wow. I guess it it reflects on the creativity, the passion, and at the end of the day, if you're dealing with a true artist, that there is no, you can't frame it like that. You just go with that flow, and it's the artistic creativity that comes out, and ultimately, it's what we love to see. Um,
Well, I feel like it's what gets a lot of us into this, right? Like that fluidity, that looseness, that sort of ease of creativity that comes out of you when you're too young to have the experience to be awarded a job with a guy like Guillermo. So it's really just a matter of like taking stock, being grateful for what we have, and remembering those roots when you're working with him because like in the end it's art. It is he's expressing something, you know, and to get onto that ride with him, it's hard to beat. That's really, really hard to beat.
is he still upset about the highways?
Of course, yeah. Well, it's not. I think it's less the highways. It's more inside the city. It's the road rage. It's the
Why is he
road rage.
driving? He shouldn't even be driving. Get a
Hey,
driver.
you know what? I mean, to his credit, he does. He drives himself. I
Wow.
bumped into him at the grocery store around the corner from my house. Like he's not he doesn't set himself apart from people. He's you know he just also happens to be Guillermo del Toro.
I think that's fabulous. Um, Taking a deep dive into the sound design of Frankenstein. So sadly, I missed this at the theaters. As soon as it was streaming on Netflix, I had the blessed enough to enjoy it in my home theater back in England, and it was just phenomenal. And I mean, I just want to start off with the Netflix da-dum is the most unique intro I've heard on a Netflix film. What was the thinking behind that? What was the executive decision? How did that happen? Because that just hits you right from the offset.
It's funny. So I have watched it in theaters several times. I've never watched it on Netflix. I haven't watched it yet. My wife watched it on Netflix without me. While I was off doing some press tour stuff for it. But it comes as news to me that the Dum is different because I had nothing to do with that. We would have had nothing to do with that. I
Right.
imagine that the Netflix team probably built something special for it if there is something. Now I need to watch it.
Now
I
you
need
need
to
to do
see.
it.
I got to
Watch
see the
it.
Dum.
Put your headphones on, or ideally watch it in a decent facility with Atmos.
Yeah.
Um, it's wonderful, and as
Mm.
soon as that happens, okay, this is going to be pretty crazy.
Well, listen, knowing the state of some theaters I've been into, it's you're more than given a pass. I know that you have a very good home theater system, and so I fully co-sign on your choice to watch it on Netflix at home in your tuned environment. No rattling panels anywhere on the walls. But yeah, in theaters, I did get to see it a few times in theaters, and it was pretty striking. So I imagine in a home Atmos setting, it would have been a nice first impression as well.
I mean, it's definitely reference material,
Oh, great.
and yeah, the whole film is beautiful. I got my mum to watch it recently. I said, "Mum, you just got to watch this. It's just a beautiful story." And she loved it. But aside from the visuals and the amazing production design, just you know, I mean, tell us the challenges working on that film. How do you get to tell this fantastical story, which it's been told so many times before, but not like this. This is just on a completely different level.
Yeah, it's funny. I like listening to Guillermo talk about this. He talks about how it's not a remake, it's an evolution. He needed this movie to grow lungs and crawl up on land and be a new form, and that's kind of what he did. And I
Just
agree. I
just like
agree.
Frankenstein.
Yeah, 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 yeah. And I agree fully, right? Like if anybody who's read the source material, I mean, there are no redeeming characters in that book apart from the father, who, in this book is basically, or in this movie is effectively a villain. But yeah, it's different in a lot of those key aspects, but the structure is the same. The structure is there. The sort of he said, she said, the two sides of the story, that's all intact. how I come to working on it, I don't know. I pinch myself. I'm really, I mean, to be handed something like that, and I've honestly have talked about that before too. Knowing how important this movie is to Guillermo, it should have been intimidating. It should have felt like this really high stakes, um, challenge, but it just didn't feel that way. And I think that's because we have this team, Nelson and myself, our re-recording mixers, Brad Zorn and Chris Cook. A lot of the support editors on this movie, it's part of that Sound Dogs family I talked about before. So the right hand knows what the left hand is doing. We're all very familiar with each other. We know how each of us knows how the other works. And Guillermo feels the same way, and he even reflected on that with me near the end of the mix. We were just outside of the theater, and he was just saying, "How long has it been? Like 10 years?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "I think that's why this went so well, just because of all of the time that we've put in together." I understand his expectations. When he
Hmm.
asks for something wacky, I understand how to read between the lines. And so I think that is ultimately the answer of how I get to work on a movie like this is by developing a trusting relationship with a guy who needs to trust the people who he's working with because the scope of his ideas are so grand that if you don't have people who you trust on the front lines with you, how do you make that land? And so, yeah, I think a little bit of chance is involved. My father having the right accountant when I was 17 plays a part in it, and that introduced me to the right people, and things kind of tumble on, and you wind up with these opportunities, and next thing you know, you're in a room with Guillermo del Toro and developing a relationship that's going to last like this, right? So that you get to the point where this movie that means so much to him, like so much to him, he didn't have to enter that he didn't have to enter this production not knowing if one of the crafts wasn't gonna click because all of the craft like he has relationships with all of the crafts. I know that you interviewed Tamara, you
Correct.
know,
Yes.
and like a lot of Dennis Berardi, the VFX supervisor, a lot of the other people on this movie are people he's collected over the years. It's almost
Hmm.
like other artists who he has curated to put their work on the walls of his house, the movie being the house.
Hmm.
But yeah, I think that's how we wound up on it.
And when you talk about wacky and you talk about you going through being ready for change, can you share some of the challenges that you guys had to face, or some of the I guess things that you can celebrate? Say, you know what, we pulled that off, and it was just crazy, but we did it. Just to give a bit more insight into your work in the film.
Yeah, I can. I mean, like it goes from small, like there. I can give you a small example and a
Hmm.
big example. The small example is I got a call. While they were shooting here in Toronto, they had an edit suite, and he was in working with Evan, the picture editor. And I got a call asking if I could go in and just sit with them to look at a scene. This is early, early, early on. Guillermo gets us involved almost as soon as he starts shooting. And so I was on another show. I had plenty of other obligations I had to meet. And I found myself going down to sit in this edit room, and they played me just a scene. It was the scene where the cadaver is laying on the table in Victor's apartment, and he gets his first sort of like pseudo success when it kind of wakes up, and then he pulls the leads, and it collapses back into death. He needed that to be boosted. I think that they were going to play it for somebody, some executives at Netflix or something like that. And he basically called me in, and he had some stuff. He just sat down. He said, like, "Look, I've got something I need back from you in 72 hours." And like that's just kind of how it works with Guillermo. When I say it's like falling off a horse, if he's going to be part of your
Wow.
day,
Okay.
you got to be kind of relaxed and ready to roll, right? And so, everything is possible. It was a matter of just figuring out how to address the existing obligations at work while also sort of like helping out my guy, you know? And so that's the small example. The bigger example that comes to mind would be it's twofold. It has to do with an artillery record that we did and how that collides with a temp mix that advanced on us by over a month. So, if you're aware of how temp mixes work, it's a mad dash to the line one way or another. Like you're really pushing hard to make it to a temp date. Um, and we had a temp date set, and I knew when that was. And so that's out of mind. That's just on the calendar. I know we're all kind of chipping away, working towards that. Meanwhile, there was this whole conversation about that blunderbuss in the beginning of the movie. Guillermo really needed that to sound bigger than any of the other guns. He wanted it to sound special. He was throwing out ideas like buy a shipping container and get a shotgun and fire it off inside the shipping container and record that. And I was just like, oh my God. So my pitch to him was, why don't we fire chains out of cannons? Which is, he was just like, he looked at me like I was crazy, but like I actually have access to that. My father-in-law works as a historical consultant, so I have access to cannons, to muskets, and to the people
Wow.
who know
Okay.
how to use them. And so, once he kind of got past that, like, are you crazy? He just said, do it. You got to do that. Do that. You know what I mean? And so, I mean, when you're dealing with a live ammunition firearms record in Canada, I assume it is probably a little easier in the States just because there's a lot, the guns are more of their culture and there's more places where you can go to fire them. Here, it's not quite the same, especially when you're dealing with cannons and muskets, right? And so there's some planning involved, and there was a lot of just sort of like clerical administration just to sort of get the pieces in order. Then we had to learn how to do it, right? Because you enter a movie like this, and there may be an impulse for a sound professional to say like, "Oh yeah, I know how to record guns," but like nobody knows how to record guns, except people who record sounds for a living. So we had to learn how to do all of that. We had to figure out, okay, so you know, what articles are there online? Thankfully, there's a bunch. There are a lot of professional sound recordists out there who sell commercial libraries, and they're very forthcoming with how they do these things. And so the team and I basically all went off in our own directions and did a bunch of research, came back together, had a few Zoom calls, not unlike this one, and just compared notes. And it was this thing that we were building over a long period of months, right? Of planning and deciding, okay, what equipment are we going to use? How are we going to get our hands on that equipment? All while also planning the actual guns and the location and everything like that. And I had that all set in stone, and it was coming. It was like going to be like next Tuesday. I'm going, and we're going to record these guns. The weather looks perfect. The wind is low. Bugs aren't crazy. There's not, you know what I mean? Like this is going to be aces. And I got a text saying we need you on a plane. We're moving the temp mix up 1 month. It starts on Monday, and Guillermo wants you in LA. And so I was going to miss the whole Canon
Wow.
record. That's falling off the horse,
Wow.
right? Going limp is just sort of taking stock of, okay, well, the my access to the guns is my father-in-law. He's very understanding. Of course, he's going to be cool with this. So, let's let him know so he can call off the armors and the weaponry and the location and everything like that. And then I just talked to the guys and said, like, look, we got to move this because I don't want to miss it, right? And so once that was canceled, I got on a plane, went down to LA. We did the temp mix. It was a mad dash as expected. Um, and then I got to work sort of doing it all again, planning that whole sequence of you know, clerical details to
Wow.
reorganize a cannon and musket record. And, we got both done. We got, you say, is there something that I look back at and I'm happy we pulled it off? We got a twofer. We pulled off the temp. Guillermo was happy with what he had as a result of that temp. I know Nelson made leaps and bounds in the dialogue edit as a result of that temp. Um, and we learned a lot in terms of what's working and what isn't for sound effects in a mix environment. And then I got to go record guns and cannons, and it was a long day, but it was a lot of fun. And the sounds are incredible. The sounds are absolutely brilliant. So, yeah, those are the kind of curveballs that I'm talking about, and the ways that we need to sort of pivot to address them.
Wow. And there's a phenomenal amount of so electricity and lightning and all that kind of stuff. And speaking to other sound designers, one would assume that there's just immense library of, yeah, I'll just pick that and just stick that in there. But ultimately, you can't. Everything is just crafted for this particular scene, for this particular movie,
Mhm.
for that mood, and things like that. And it's just incredible how you guys just come up with. This sounds really, really convincing. I haven't got a clue where you got the sound from, but that's exactly how I guess it would sound if that was real.
Yeah, well, I think that sort of tactile life experience perspective is key in sound design because you're right, there are massive libraries. Unfortunately, it is my experience that there are massive libraries of unusable sound effects out there,
Right.
right? Like there are a lot of dated old recordings of thunder, for example,
Hmm.
that sound very dated and very old, right? And in some cases, that's useful, you know. There are also modern versions of them, and there are, overbuilt, designed versions of lightning. There are all kinds of different sound libraries out there. I'm focusing on lightning because that's what you mentioned. But like they are not all made equal, and a big part of the job is sort of digging through that library to find the shreds and pieces of these sounds that you want to put in the movie. And then, once you've got something plausible cut, then you got to make it exciting. And that's when you go in and you start choosing sounds that aren't lightning, that aren't, and repurposing things because you have to think of the world from that sort of tactile sensibility. What sound would ground somebody in the reality of this moment, right? Not just a crack of thunder, but maybe
Hmm.
also the shake in the house or things like that.
I love the multi-layering because it becomes extremely complicated, and
Hmm.
then trying to differentiate the different sounds from one another, but it sort of all has to work together and sound natural, but boosted, as you said earlier on, to give that sort of drama and excitement.
Yeah, I have to. I'm going to just take a second here to give a shout out to Scott Hitchin, who was our junior sound effects editor. He started on Frankenstein as the assistant editor, and we promoted him to editor midstream. He edited the thunderstorm in the creation scene in his apartment during a thunderstorm outside, and so he
Fantastic.
started losing grip of like what am I editing versus what's actually happening outside the window. And given that he nailed it pretty early on, I was really impressed by what he pulled together for that.
Fantastic. And I read early on this year, it was announced that there's going to be an extended version of the film, but I think only for physical media. Is that correct?
That's not my understanding. We did
Hmm.
just finish the mix on it. I think that they are doing, if I understand correctly, please, vet this. But to my understanding, I believe that they are doing Criterion release
Oh, wow.
simultaneously with a Netflix release. So I think that the extended cut will be available on
Hmm.
Netflix, but they are also releasing it for Criterion.
Okay. Well, I mean, I'm a huge fan of physical media anyway, so for physical media fans, that's a fantastic addition.
Yeah.
And if you're watching it on Netflix, watch it again.
Hmm.
It's as I said, it's one of those films. It was so delightful. It's one of those surprise films that you don't really know how it's going to pan out until it pans out, and then it blows your mind. And it's as I said, reference audiovisual material. It's such a fantastic film. But it's beautiful in every way. The story, the characters. It's a real gem. So it's wonderful that you guys got to work on it. Um,
We're really proud.
And I was just reading through your profile. Both you and Nelson also worked on Shaolin Soccer from back in the day. And I was
Yeah, it was kind of a
scrolling,
version. We did a version of
right,
it. Yeah.
and I just looked at that and I thought, if anyone who's seen the film, it's hilarious. It's brilliant. It's such good fun. But a lot of the film, is carried by the crazy sound mix because it's just wild and wonderful. And normally, if you're watching a game of soccer, unless it's the World Cup, it's not particularly exciting unless it's about the goals or whatever. But this is all about the effects. So I just wanted to shout out about that.
Yeah. That was a fun movie. I was actually pretty. That was early in my career, that movie, and we were doing an adaptation of it. So I do need to make sure that I don't. I regret to inform you, I don't recall who did the initial sound design on it. I would encourage anyone to look at IMDb to give credit where credit is due. But yeah, Nelson and I did an adaptation, a conversion for, I think it was part of the English market conversion. And there were some sound effects embellishments that we did. But yeah, for the most part, that was a fun show. A lot of early mornings and late nights, I remember.
And I just wanted to ask you your personal favorite TV shows, movies, either in terms of the sound design or just stuff that you really enjoy, just to share with the audience. What sort of stuff would you watch again and again, or things that really impressed you? Classic things, modern stuff, whatever you
Oh
love.
wow. So that's a big slate. It really depends on what it is that you're looking for. Um, we could start with current. Like right now, I'm really enjoying Spider Noir, specifically
Mm.
the black and white release of it. I will be hunting out interviews with the production designer and cinematographer because it seems like one of those example pieces of how you can shoot with the intent of releasing in black and white, like how you can use color to emphasize black and white and give it more depth and drama. I did watch an episode in color. I prefer the black and white. I don't have any reason to believe this, but I'm convinced that they intended to shoot it for
Mhm,
black and
mhm,
white,
mhm.
just because of the just the quality of the depth of field in it. I think the sound is fantastic. I think it's just a brilliantly executed show from craft and storytelling perspectives. Of course, it's not done, so I don't know where it's going to go in terms of story, but they're they're hitting a lot of beats. They're doing some really interesting things with Nicolas Cage's voice in the mask, and I think that the effects and design, everything about it, I'm really enjoying the presentation of that show. Another show I really like is Half Man. It was the same creator as Baby Reindeer. And it's dark. It's really dark. That one's just a good watch from a story perspective. Not a happy watch, but again, they use some interesting mixed techniques for the voice of the lead character to make him sound really big and imposing. I found that pretty impressive. Films. Well, I mean, the my favorite movie I've seen recently was Obsession. I
Right.
absolutely adore when someone takes a very modest budget and does something, executes really well, based like they don't try and do more than they can with with a budget. It was a very pragmatic film in terms of, its assembly and the technique and craft used to do it. But it was also just a great story, really well, directed, edited, everything was really lovely in that movie and intense, I really liked that movie. Favorite movies more broadly recently. Boy, I mean it feels like low-hanging fruit to say One Battle After Another. It did win Best Picture, but I mean, like, to be fair, I mean, this is just personal opinion. I think one of my favorite movies last year was Begonia. I absolutely
Right.
adored Begonia. Just the storytelling, the sort of zany sense of humor, that like looking at things from another perspective idea, which we touched on briefly here when it comes to crafting sound design, looking at things from another perspective and finding another way to present something. I liked. I think uh, I think Yorgos nailed that one. Um, I guess going back, if someone's just looking for a favorite movie from me, just all time favorite, I think I'm gonna say True Romance.
All right. Yeah.
I mean, killer cast. If you know, you know. If you haven't seen it, get your hands on a copy because it's a good one.
Fantastic. And the going forward, are you allowed to promo any projects that you're working on currently? Can you share any information with us?
There's not a lot of information I am allowed to share.
Hmm.
Something, you know what, actually there's one really cute movie that I worked on last year. It's finished, it's premiered. It premiered at the oh, what's it? It's a French film festival. Give me a second here. It was Annecy.
Hmm.
Annecy Film Festival. It's called Julian. It's an animated movie. It's children focused, but really sweet. It's about a little Dominican boy who goes to stay with his abuela in Queens. And it's a story of self-exploration and maybe discovering things that he likes that other boys don't like, and challenges. And the premise is he wants to be a mermaid, and he just, he's exploring this new world of sea life. He just adores the sea. So there are tons of like creative opportunities in that movie, but it's also just a really sweet movie that I think I don't know if it's gonna see a theatrical release or if it will come out on one of the streamers. But Julian, I would look out for that one. It's a really cute animated movie. Um, Beautifully done. Of course, I also really enjoyed the process of making it. The team that made it was lovely, but yeah, it's a fun little movie.
It sounds like a almost like a French version of Luca, but
Yeah, well, it's
slightly
so
different.
yeah, it's made out of this small animation studio out of Ireland called Cartoon Saloon.
Right.
And yeah, it's beautiful. It's hand animated, so all hand drawn, massive team of animators behind it. It's a bit of a break from the norm in that
Hmm.
sense. Like
Hmm.
it's not as computer generated as a lot of things are now. Um, but yeah, I would put that on the recommend, especially for people with young ones
Hmm.
who want to just like park themselves in front of a TV. Maybe they've got a nice sound system and they want to watch and hear something that's nice for them as well. I know a lot of animated movies for kids are like they kind of nod to the parents.
Hmm.
But this was one of those sort of fill your soul kind of projects where you really get to sort of contribute to something meaningful.
I look forward to that.
Yeah.
And talk about sound systems. Have you got a pair of Genelecs behind you?
Yes. Yeah, those are let's say they're the smart active monitors, the
Right.
ones that have a little DSP brain and you can tune your room because, like a lot of people in Toronto who work remote, I'm in a bedroom in my house, so it's
Hmm.
not acoustically the best space. So it's nice to have speakers that can adapt with a bit of room
Hmm. Hmm.
correction, And I'm actually they're pretty faithful, these guys. I'm pretty happy with them.
Yeah, it's they're very. I've seen Genelecs often used in a lot of post production places,
Hmm.
and of course you mentioned DSP and room correction. So the, a lot of the when we put systems in, the calibration is so important. And if it needs to be done correctly, you need the right kit to do that. And obviously, a lot of the processors nowadays, the more sophisticated processors, you're actually paying for the quality of the digital room correction software. Um,
Which, I mean, I also, so my home theater system is all based on an Anthem receiver,
hmm.
and that was my introduction to room correction done well.
Hmm.
And yeah, to any of your audience who's curious, correct the room before you correct the gear
That's
because
right.
you know a well-treated room or a room that has decent correction, um, that goes a long way. That
Hmm.
that 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 makes a very big difference. It's not as sexy an upgrade to put panels on the walls or to sort of, deal with weird reflections. But if what you're going for is better sound, that's where you find it.
Absolutely, and the it's interesting. When we talk about when you're watching stuff or watching, you mentioned Spider Noir, for instance. It's on my list, but I could tell this was going to be brilliant just because it's black and white. I thought, okay, this is going to be cool, like Sin City vibes. I'd say.
Yeah.
Um,
I will say give it a shot. Give it a shot in both color and black and white
mhm,
because I'm
mhm.
sure some people prefer the color. I love that they've done it concurrently so that you can watch and just episode by episode you can
Yeah,
pick whether you want to go color or black and white. Like it's beautiful for that. I just prefer the black and white.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, when you're working in the industry, do you become sort of a lot more picky or sensitive to sound mixes and things? I'll give you an example. So, for instance, I can't watch a film production on a small screen or on an airplane. I just can't. Documentary, sports, you know, not a problem if it's sort of informational type thing. But if it's a film, because I know the production value that's gone into that thing, it has to be celebrated properly. Watch it on a decent screen so you can appreciate the visuals and at least have a pair of headphones if you don't have a home theatre setup. Um, what's it like for you?
Much the same. So, in my house, I'm the sound department. My wife is picture department. She used to work for IMAX,
Oh
and
wow,
so
okay.
she's got a pretty discriminating set of eyes. And so, it's pretty uncommon for us to watch something without it being presented well. So it's difficult for me to really weigh in. I have, like, of course, I've seen some things on Roku stream bars. I've been to other people's houses and they haven't turned off motion smoothing. You know, is someone who has a surround sound system in a room that's a triangle and like the center speaker's beside the left speaker. I struggle with those things, but like the reality, the reality is,
What do you do in that situation? I
can
can
I turn it
imagine.
off? Like I have to turn it off. Like the thing is like, at the end of the day, when I'm
Oh
finished
gosh.
working, I've been scrutinizing a TV show or a film frame by frame all day. And
Right.
at the end of the day, usually the first thing I want to do is go outside. I don't want to
Of
be near
course.
TV. I don't want to be near speakers, but I also do love watching as much as I can, preferably in a theater. I do love a good home theater experience, but if you can go to a movie theater, man, I've said this a few times before, but if you've ever walked in a room after two people have finished having an argument and they're not talking, you know that they've had an argument. It's that connection between human beings that you experience in a theater that takes, a 5 out of 10 joke and gets you a 9 out of 10 laugh because everybody's laughing together. Everybody is afraid together. Everyone is startled together. So theaters are that's a thing. So you ask how I enjoy these things when it's a less than ideal environment. I just have to switch it off. And I mean, like, honestly, that's something that I think a lot of professionals have become very good at is recognizing how much of their audience is going to watch what I'm pouring my heart and soul into on a phone. Because that's going to happen. A lot of people, second screen viewing is a whole style of production now where they need to reiterate the plot and tell you again and say things repetitively so that someone can be playing Candy Crush on their phone and still watching
Wow.
a TV show, right? So these are things that are employed in the making of a lot of, we'll call that content, right? And then
Wow. Okay.
then there's art, right, which is a little bit more, I think, focus. There's a bit more of a focus requirement. I will say that when I'm working, you or people like you are my favorite audience. It's always, there's always that question, how will this play on an iPad? And my response is typically, let's reward the people with the sound system. Let's reward the people with the big screen, right? Reward the people who have invested because they're paying attention. They've spent a lot of money on all of that equipment. Let's reward those people. Um, but yeah, if you work in it, the occupational hazard is an absolute requirement to be able to switch it off, to completely turn it off, because otherwise you're that guy, and nobody wants to be that guy. You don't want to be the person sitting at your friend's house saying, like, you, if you got a little bit more space from your speakers to the wall, you might, you know what I mean? Like, it's just, to some people, it's wallpaper. It's just
It's just
entertainment,
hilarious.
you know?
Why is the TV in the corner? Why is the speaker? Then you just have to.
Yeah,
So what's for dinner then?
yeah. Yeah, it's what's for dinner. I think that's the better question to ask when you're in those situations
Oh,
because,
just kids'
like,
school going. Let's just turn the TV off and change subjects.
yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah. Can
No,
I do it? Yeah, I've had to. You know, everyone's had to watch a show with just the TV speakers, which is painful, you know. But we do it, you know.
no,
I can watch. It's been a long time, actually. Maybe I can't say this truthfully. I was about to say I can watch something on an airplane, but I don't
mhm.
know that I can. You know, yeah, it's been a while. It's been a while.
I mean, interestingly, I watched on the way from the UK to Canada. So I refused to watch any movies, and I thought, and I'd already watched the documentaries. Superman documentary, by the way, is fantastic. So that's something I really
Okay.
enjoyed on the airplane.
All right.
And I was running out of stuff, and I saw The Pit being advertised. And the only thing that appealed to me was the fact that it was an HBO series, and I thought, well, it's HBO. They always make fantastic series. Watched the first episode of that, and I thought, I need to watch the rest of this, but properly. And I'm glad I did, because it's audiovisual. It's sonically,
Yeah.
it's phenomenal.
Yeah. Thanks for
Um,
bringing that up. We'll add that to my answer from before. That's another banger of a show that
yeah,
I
yeah,
absolutely love
it's
currently. It's
just
a mile
insane.
marker. Yeah,
Um,
it's
and on one of my previous episodes, I Brian Parker, one of the sound supervisor for the show, had a really good chat with him. Check that out.
yeah, I
Um,
will. I
but I
will.
remember when we moved to the condo here, um, I just refused to watch any TV shows until I had at least like a 5-1 setup, because you're going to spend a lot of time watching these things, and I know you guys work diligently. That you just described, falling off the horse, and you guys really put so much into the production. As you said before, it's important to celebrate it properly with the right equipment, because then you get to see the magic and hear the magic of what you guys put into it. So if I'm going to watch something once or twice, I need to do it properly. I can't. It doesn't do it justice just casually enjoying these things. So thanks to you guys, and the reason we get all this stuff is that we can enjoy the content for how it was intended to be celebrated.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, that's something I'll often say to people when they're curious about what happens when you go to a 5-1 system, like the one that you said that you have in your condo here in Toronto. Um, the best example and the most affordable way that I can think of for someone to experience why it makes a difference, I always recommend that people take Sonos for an
Hmm.
example. There are often showrooms where Sonos, like it's a reasonably affordable
Yeah,
system, right?
it's entries, and it gives you a flavour.
Yeah, you can play your music through one. Then you compare two. And I
Hmm.
always recommend people to listen in one and then listen in two and hear how much more you hear. And that's when people start to understand when you start dividing the load and give two speakers a job and they can split that load between them so that one speaker isn't trying to do all the high frequencies, mid frequencies, and
Hmm.
low frequencies. All of a sudden, you get a lot more detail. Just take a song you're familiar with, put on Fleetwood Mac Rumors or whatever you
Hmm.
want,
Hmm.
right? Something that you know has a lot of detail that you notice. Go to two speak like first listen in one speaker, go to two speakers. Now imagine what happens when you've got five. Imagine what happens when you can hear it in Atmos. Think of the detail that can come out and how much that can just immerse you in what you're watching. It's my opinion people are paying a lot of money to watch movies right now. Get the most out of it, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
I think
and
that it's worth it.
and the whole thing is now shifted to, if you go to any modern musical now, they're all cinematic musicals. Yeah, it's not the same as just singing with an orchestra at the front. Back to the Future, the musical, MJ, the musical. Take any of these modern shows, and the amount of sound design that goes into it. It's a much more immersive, extraordinary experience.
Hmm. Hmm. Are you speaking like stage performance or in theaters? Like
So,
for
so stage
theatrical
performance.
release?
Yeah,
Right.
the sort of modern musicals on stage.
Right.
There's a lot of complexity when it comes to the sound design now compared to
Yeah, I bet.
20,
I
30
bet.
years ago.
I can't speak personally. I don't go to a lot of live stage performances, but I could see
Hmm.
the useful application of sound design in those
So
settings.
if you're ever in London, UK, or Broadway,
Yeah.
Back to the Future, the musical, is phenomenal.
Okay. Yeah, yeah, I
and
would check that out.
Stranger Things on Stage.
Okay. Yeah. Wow. Okay. That you've piqued a new interest here.
And I think in Toronto this year, this was a big success back in the UK, but uh, the Karate Kid, the musical,
Okay.
is going to be in Toronto this year, so that's something I'm really looking forward to.
And you've seen it in UK?
No, I've seen the socials, and I've seen some of the behind the scenes of how they produce it and audience reactions,
Hmm.
and think it did really really well there. And if you're a Karate Kid fan, and if you love Cobra Kai, you've just got to do it.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. Any kid of the 80s,
Absolutely.
you know.
And are you going to be coming to Toronto Film Festival events later on this year? Is that something that you
Uh
attend?
TBD.
Hmm.
TBD. I'm not sure actually this year. That's you're talking about planning more than 2 weeks out, which feels out of reach to me right now.
Who knows what's going to happen? You might get a phone call to listen. We need you
Yeah,
somewhere else.
you never know, you never know. But yeah, like there are usually a few standouts that
Hmm.
I try to make it to during TIFF. We'll see. Yeah, I know some people who always look to break last year's record in terms of how many films they'll see at TIFF. I'm not that
Right.
guy, but I understand it. I mean, I get it. I am very much in the camp of consume your body weight in popcorn on a yearly basis, going to the theater. Um, whether a big portion of that happens at TIFF or not, I'm not sure.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
I'll, you know, I plan to be present in a lot of theaters. So
Well, interestingly, the one of the downsides to having an awesome movie theatre at home is tend to go to the movie theatre less. So back in England, I'd probably go to the movie theatre only for the really big releases, probably 2 or 3 times a year. Whereas here, even though I've got a entry level system, just to enjoy TV content, I'm going sort of 2 to 3 times a month. As soon as the film comes out, Ultra AVX D box seats booked because I know it's only going to screen for 5 days.
yeah. Yeah, well, I mean that's part of the cycle now, right?
Yeah.
And it's something that it is difficult to break free from, but I will always encourage people to go to a theater, see it with other human beings. It brings us together. You know, when you watch a movie and you laugh next to somebody else who you don't know, like I don't know how you vote, right? I don't know what your opinions are. You know, you could be someone I would never get along with, but we're laughing at the same thing, you know, and we share a lot in theaters. I think that shared experience in a
Mm.
movie theater takes that whole story up a notch, several notches, I believe. I think it's worth it. There's a value to seeing something in the theater that you cannot transpose into the home theater, no matter how good it is. You know, you can get some brilliant home theaters. You know, you will also experience the occasional rattling panel,
Mhm.
right? Or like a torn speaker cone, or ghosting on the screen. But that's part of it. That's part of life. Life isn't perfect, right? Nothing beautiful is perfect, and nothing perfect is beautiful. So just sort of embrace it and roll with it. But yeah, I get it. Like having a nice home theater system, it's comfy, it's cozy. You sit at home, you watch things. You don't have to go out. Maybe there's weather. I don't know.
But I 100% agree with you, and having had exactly that experience watching one battle after the another, ballerina John Wick, and um, most recently The Furious, sitting with a bunch of guys and then random people in the audience, all gasping and laughing at the same sort of scenes. It's a fantastic experience
It is.
of
It
bringing
is.
people together. We watched, I think, Primate last year, not having a clue as to what to expect from this film, and audience all grimacing together. Oh my god, the things on the screen. I mean, Obsession. I've not seen that in theatres, but that it's phenomenal from what I've heard.
It is.
And having that, you don't know what to expect, and then communal connection. I completely agree with this, to be celebrated properly in the theatre, and then when you want to recreate that moment at home with family and friends, you've got the home theatre environment. So I completely agree with you. Let's all keep celebrating the theatres and celebrating the art that you guys bring to the big screen. Is there anything else that you're working on that you want to share with us?
Yeah, Silo season 3 should be coming out soon. I supervise that with another partner, Dustin Harris. He takes care of the dialogue. I take care of the sound design. Really cool show. For anyone who hasn't seen it, it often makes it kind of filters up to the top of the list when it gets released on Apple TV Plus. It's if you like shows that play with your sense of paranoia and trust, it's definitely one of those. It's a dystopian future civilization underground. You start the show and you don't know why they're there or how long they've been there. It's really good. Tons of world building because it's underground. It's like this giant, like massive 10,000 citizen underground concrete silo dwelling. And so you can't reach for the normal ingredients that you would when building a show. Like one of the big rules in the show is that there's no wood. You know what I mean? Like the wood is a scarce. It's like gold down there because you can't grow a forest of trees. And so, that's a cool concept. And then you start building this world, and you're not allowed to reach for anything that sounds like wood. None of the doors can have wood in them. No elements can have that natural feeling that is inherently baked into so many sound effects in a lot of our libraries. So a lot of the stuff had to be kind of created from scratch. A lot of really fun sort of like, yeah, world building tech in the show.
That's really intriguing. I'm just thinking of all sorts of previous shows from Lost when you're talking about the whole trust element and people
Hmm.
sort of being in a contained place to how they built the Death Star, and I don't think there's any wood on the Death Star. So
Yeah,
how do you
yeah,
bring
yeah,
those two worlds together? But
yeah,
that
yeah,
sounds phenomenal. So definitely worth checking out and adding that to the list as well. So I appreciate the letting us know.
yeah, for sure.
Nathan, thank you so much once again for taking the time and sharing your your stories, your passion, and we look forward to seeing much more of what you're doing. And hopefully you'll an hour and a half away. Hopefully meet up someday and grab a coffee.
Yeah, it'd be lovely. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much. All the
Okay.
best. Bye bye. Bye
Cheers.
bye.